The governor recently used some words to express his feelings on the state of the economy. His words were, "Ohio remains under the influence of one of the deepest recessions since the Great Depression of the 1930s. So a pretty ugly picture. The economy of Ohio is depressed. The unemployment rate is high. Tax revenue dollars are declining. And to make matters worse, the industries that we used to rely on to generate jobs here in Ohio are going away." And so when you look at the state of affairs, it wasn't long ago that the government of Ohio was paying 60 plus, closer to 65% of all the operating expenses to run the state universities. Today, they're only able to afford to pay 20%. So it leaves a huge gap for the universities to struggle with, to solve, forcing them to do three things. One, they've had to raise tuition. I'm sure you've felt all that pain. Number two, they have been forced to cut their operating expending budgets by a significant amount, thus forcing the university to lay off administrative people and faculty people. And then thirdly, they've had to rely more on the endowment that the university has raised to cover operating expenses so that they didn't have to cut too deep, and to create scholarship programs more plentiful for students. Our goal is still to attract the best and brightest high school students to come to Ohio University. The fees are going up. We want to be competitive, and we're trying our very best to use scholarships more broadly to help parents and students kind of get over this hurdle of affordability and yet come to Ohio University. So there is a lot of work going on. We have high unemployment, low tax rates, and nowhere to turn is kind of the starting point of where we are today. We're in a world of hurt here. We've got to fix this. The good news is we're in the Midwest. We're in an environment where the mindset of people is one where we don't give up. We can do whatever it takes. That spirit, that camaraderie, that drive, that ambition is really what's going to push us forward to fixing our economy. I have no doubts. It may take a few years, but we will be back into a prosperous state that we once were and enjoyed. And I think there's a number of ways that we can get there. And I'd like to talk about some of those. We got to start by saying, where is the first thing we have to do to begin to turn around the economy is we got to build new industry. And it's a growing belief today that new industry is going to come out of the research labs of the state's universities. And that this is going to have to get exploited and supported. Research has to be done in a way that will really enable business to be formed around it that can form the basis then of new industry. And when I'm talking about new industry, I'm really talking about life science, medical technology. I'm talking about renewable green tech energy. I'm talking about information technology. These are some fields where technology is in its early age of infancy of being exploited, and there's tremendous areas of further growth and development that can happen, that will take place. And I'm happy to tell you that Ohio University is doing a stellar job. They're really number one, leading the charge on technology commercialization in this state today. The royalties, the equity income that's being generated from the licensing of technology is second to nobody. Case we beat them. Ohio State, huge research centers. We have more royalty dollars coming in than does Ohio State. So when we look at doing technology transfer, innovation, what we're really trying to do is make sure that we're building technology that is worthy of a marketplace, that can go out and serve a customer, that we can then commercialize to build businesses around. And if we can do that and keep doing that, then we can maintain our state leadership position. So when I first got here, when I first came back to work with Dr. McDavis 4 years ago, there was 5 things that we identified that had to be worked on to try to optimize the positioning of Ohio University to be a leader in technology commercialization and entrepreneurship. And I'm happy to say a lot of work has been done progressing today on these fronts. The first one was we needed to do research work that was worthy of being commercialized. So if we go off on starting a research project, we should take a moment and stop and say, if this project is successful, the outcoming technology, is there a market in the world that it could serve where there's a real customer need? And make sure that our research work is aligned with the commercialization opportunities that could come down the road. And make sure more and more of our research is done with this focus in mind. Number 2 is we have to teach and train and mentor our students on the principles of how to be an entrepreneur. How do you take an idea? How do you take a piece of technology and evolve that into a viable, growing, successful, profitable business? You have to understand that process. Early on, you have to form a small team, a complementary team. If you're the CEO, maybe I need a VP of engineering, a VP of go-to-market sales, a VP of manufacturing. You put a team of complementary quality people together who really like each other, work well to each other, respect each other. And then they go off and write a business plan. This is the best you can do of kind of defining the unique technology you have, the product that's going to evolve from it, the market you're going to sell it to, and how much revenue you think you can generate over the years ahead. And then you take this business plan out to venture capitalists, to me. And we will spend 4 or 5 or 10 meetings over a month or 2 reviewing this and tearing it apart and really understanding it, because I need to know if you understand it. And you need to know, who is this crackpot? Me. And can we work together? And after a while, we'll finally come together and say, I'd like to invest $5 million in this business and get going. And somebody else may come in and say, well, I'd like to invest $5 million. So maybe you can raise $10 million through 2 investors, and now you're off to the races. Now you've got a year or year and a half or maybe a little more of time where you can build a company, go out and rent a big facility. You can put in it 10 or 20 or 30 or 50 employees. Everybody's running to kind of build product and get ready to go to market, putting marketing campaigns together of communicating to the world that we're coming, and then executing all that and basically entering the market, start generating revenue. And maybe at that point in time you run out of money. You've demonstrated that you can build a product. You've demonstrated that you can get somebody to buy it and pay revenue for it. So it's starting to work. But now you will have to need to raise some more money so that you can take it to the next level. Maybe I want to start working on a second product. Maybe instead of just serving a certain segment of the market, I want to serve a bigger portion of the market, maybe the global market. And the cost to put personnel out there and support services is expensive. And so I'm going to have to invest in building that infrastructure. But over time, and spending this money, revenues start to grow, and pretty soon your revenues will exceed your operating expenses and you become profitable. And if you can sustain that, now you're a real company and you're growing and you don't need me anymore. You don't need my money. And so then we begin talking about what kind of an exit is best for you and your company. Do we want to go public and be a public company? Do we want to find a perfect partner and merge with them? Or a much larger company and be acquired by them? You know, and in all these cases, that means there's a cash flow back into the company. Some of it goes to you, the employees. And great wealth can be achieved through this process. If you're not born rich today, this is one of the last avenues where you can get rich by being an entrepreneur, starting a company, making it successful, and then having an exit, selling the company, merging that company, going public with that company. And Silicon Valley is full of millionaires, 100 millionaires, billionaires from just doing this. Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook, going to go public next week. The valuation of his company is said to be $100 billion the day he goes public. And I don't know how many billion, but his pockets will be lined with billions of dollars. So I mean, this is an extreme, but it happens all the time. And if you have the driving ambition to be an entrepreneur and you go about it the right way, you also can get very wealthy and enjoy the stardoms of building an idea into a great successful company. So what was I talking about? I got off on a tangent. So I was saying we need to do research that's worthy of being commercialized. We need to train and teach students on how to build great companies. We also need to go out to the professional service providers in the state and get them to change their practices to work with our new startup businesses. So that means we need to go to the lawyers and the bankers and the accountants and the recruiters and the landlords and all these cast of people whose services we need at some phase in starting our little company, and get them to work with us, meaning I don't have a lot of money at this early stage. I can't pay you, Mr. Lawyer, $100,000 to incorporate my business. I don't have it, but I do need to get incorporated and do it correctly. I can't go sign a little 1,000 square foot piece of a building that I'm going to start in and work in, but I'm not going to sign a 5-year lease for that building because I know in 6 or 8 months I'm outgrowing it. I got to move into a bigger building. And so I need a 1-year lease at most. And when I go to recruit a VP of marketing, I get a recruiter and they say, I'm happy to help you. It's going to cost you $100,000 for me to help you hire that person. I can't afford that. I'll pay you $5,000. So these professional service providers have to adapt their practices and recognize the value of getting in on the ground floor with these companies, making a little sacrifice and cutting some of their costs. But over the years, as they're now plugged into these companies and these companies grow, they make their money many times over and are very happy that they did what they did. And this story is going to have to get told and sold to these professional service providers here in the near future.